Thank you, Ron, and for inviting us tonight. Dr. Boylan and I have been talking about this for some time, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to share some of the work that we're doing in programming and at Westminster College. So, as people come in and out tonight, and certainly as this is viewed as a recording, we welcome feedback and ideas and insights for programming, but also for uh, uh, just your general thoughts and ideas about sustainability. And so we'll have contact information associated at the end where you can reach out to us, um, and uh, and obviously through SCORE as well. They'll have our contact information. So I'm going to start. I can screen share. I'll take just one moment. I'll pull up the presentation that we have a few slides put together for us. And Ron, if you can confirm on your end that we're seeing.
We have it, Pat.
All righty, fantastic. And so, as I am talking here, I'm Patrick Krantz. I'm a professor, associate professor of environmental science at Westminster College. We are located in New Wilmington, Pennsylvania, and uh, I've been at the school for almost 20 years. I'm in the end of my 19th year, and at the college, I've had the opportunity to do quite a few things. In preparing for this, we were asked to send a few uh, pieces of information about ourselves, and it's um, I probably have not followed the traditional path that students may think about as that professors do, as the college has afforded me a lot of opportunity to be creative, and through that process has led me to work with Dr. Boylan, who also joins us tonight. And so, uh, Helen,
Am I up?
you are.
So my name is Helen Boylan. I'm a professor of chemistry and environmental science, and I'm the director for the Center for the Environment at Westminster College. And with that, you to move it on to the next slide. So this is sort of an outline of our presentation for tonight. And we're going to be talking about the Center for the Environment, which is an umbrella center that houses our environmental education programs at Westminster and also our outdoor resources, including our field station. As part of the Center for the Environment, we have a program, an educational program that we offer called the Environmental Project Management Academy. We're going to talk about that and how that has led to this entrepreneurial outcome involving the college's apiary. And finally, we're going to talk big picture, sort of a big picture context. What does this mean in terms of higher education and how the Center for the Environment can address some of the challenges facing higher education?
So we'll begin the process with talking about our mission for the Center for the Environment. And some of the important aspects about this, every organization has a mission. Uh, as we have worked in, developed ours, and as it's evolved, our focus has really been on trying to um, connect with people. Um, in our list of priorities, we think about society, the environment, and the economy, and developing an understanding of that relationship. It's constantly changing. Uh, we are an academic institution, so critical thinking, but also creative expression. Um, and we are specific in acknowledging that we have entrepreneurial endeavors and that we embrace diverse perspectives. All those things are important um, in our mission statement. In the mission statement, we specifically talk about society, the environment, and the economy. But in working terms, we have to talk about people, profit, and planet, and that sort of um, the relationships between all those. A well-rounded, a well-educated person will have an appreciation for, and hopefully some deep understandings about, especially through our program, about environmental science and um, the planet. But we don't operate in silos, and so anytime we have issues involving the environment, we see the impact on people. And we would be naive to think that um, to have these conversations about the environment, the impact on people, and not think about driving forces uh, of profit. And so that sweet spot right in the middle, where we have this overlap, where we have congruency between people, profit, and planet, that we find that we can achieve sustainability. So often we see when only one of those areas are being addressed that we have conflict. And so it's our goal to try to seek that balance and create students and experiences and outcomes that embrace all three of those components.
So the Environmental Project Management Academy is a unique educational experience at Westminster, and understanding those three P's, people, profit, planet, is an important part of that. But I want to give you a little bit of background about how this program came to be. I was invited to participate in this Leadership Institute, and we had to bring sort of an idea that we were working on. And it was at that time that employers were saying to colleges that our graduates were not prepared for the workforce. And so what I really wanted to do was think about a program that would help prepare students for the workforce. And so I sort of envisioned this trifecta where environmental science students learn about project management, but also learn soft skills. And that was sort of the idea, the initial idea. And that idea was refined and eventually submitted to the National Science Foundation, and it was a funded program. And so over the last 4 years, we've been funded by the National Science Foundation to put on this program.
So Helen, does that continue? Will that continue to happen, your funding for this program?
So the funding stream is not available anymore, but what we're envisioning are kind of spin-offs of that original program. So we have a lot of good ideas that have come from it that we're spinning off, and entrepreneurship is one of those. And
Okay.
so we think we're going to probably end up seeking out additional funding sources to support these spin-off ideas.
Yeah, because I was going to ask both of you a question about, I mean, you don't have a school of business really at Westminster. You have a business department, I think. It's
Yeah.
really not, it's really not a school of business, right?
Well, it's called a school of business. I don't know what distinguishes a school from
Yeah,
a department.
I don't know either, but anyway, one of my questions is, as we go through this, there's tremendous value, I think, in what you guys are doing, at least what I picked up from the students, that ties in back to entrepreneurial studies and makes the programs whole. And I think it's pretty, I want you guys to, as you go through this, explain how you came up with this, because I think it's actually pretty dynamic.
Well, and we've worked over the last 4 years to kind of refine the model and how we do things, and we think we have a good model now. And what we'd like to see is other disciplines sort of doing the same kind of model. But
Yeah,
it's really this trifecta approach. And at Westminster, the EPMA program was an 8-credit experience, so the equivalent of 2 courses with a lab. And so through the environmental science portion that I taught, the students learned things like the major environmental issues facing our planet. They learned lab skills, they learned field methods, they did data analysis, and definitely got experience with scientific communication. The students learned project management working with my colleague, Professor Brian Petrus out of the School of Business, where they were doing business literacy, talking about organizational structures, learning project management and software associated with project management. They learned some basic economics and budgeting. They talked about social ethics and social responsibility, and also project communication and documentation. But
okay.
honestly, the real strong piece of this program is honestly the leadership and teamwork aspect. So our colleague Allison Dubois out of the graduate program put together this dynamic weekly seminar for the students where they would read and then do experiences in the seminar setting where they were evaluating their own personal strengths and weaknesses. They were looking at different leadership styles. They practice communication skills. They practice giving and receiving feedback, and to every single student who has been part of this cluster experience has said that the leadership by far was the most valuable part of this experience. But they also recognize that without the ability to implement this leadership in the other components, it wouldn't have been as valuable. So it's really all three pieces were really important to make it happen.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. And the other unique aspect is that this was taught to a cohort of STEM students and business students, with the goal of STEM students becoming business literate and business students becoming STEM literate and being able to talk to one another, right? And so they weren't afraid of science, and the science students weren't afraid of business. And so I think that was another big value add to this process.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Next. So what the students learned in environmental science, project management, and leadership, they then put into experience by integrating those skills and working on projects. So the projects were really long projects, 9-week projects. They worked in collaboration with a community partner, and they studied real world problems. And they looked at both the science and the business of these real world problems. They looked at solar energy, acid mine drainage, and we looked at hemp market analysis. So kind of a wide range of topics, but all associated with environmental issues and tied to business.
Mm-hmm.
That's a close-up picture of my face just to enhance this presentation. I think it's important.
To enhance it?
It's important to enhance the presentation. Yes, I think so. Working in higher ed, it's and talking about entrepreneurialism is those are not always hand in hand. They're very different cultures, and I think we recognize it's important that we recognize that um, in an entrepreneurial culture is all about empowering people. It's about being creative. It's about attention to the basics. It's hands-on. You have the freedom to fail. Um, you have personal responsibility. It's about the future. Whereas in higher ed, um, this is not always the case. This is and I put the culture of academia. I laugh because I couldn't decide if this was the culture of academia or if this is the academia of culture. It's sort of like the West Virginia University or the University of West Virginia. Nobody can decide on what we should call these things, but it's a very different culture. It's focused it's curriculum driven and achievement. Having the GPA, having being in honors programs, and that it's really that's ensconced within that culture. And so, and there's a real reluctance to change. I think that there's a benefit to that because we are institutions, but that change is also a hindrance, and it's important to recognize that bringing entrepreneurial ideas and activities in. Um, we'd like to think of it as being received with these broad open arms, and there's people that in any organization doesn't want to change. Higher ed embraces that mentality of we are who we are and we're going to stay that way. There's disciplinary transitions. People tend to teach the way that they were taught. We now have in this environment during our period of this specific work are now hybrid. We all have students who are in person and some who are virtual. And the trends to have totally online degree programs has been with us for a while. And we have this idea of intellectual property, so that when we close our door, this is what happens. And there's some protection in that, but there's also, again, that lack of change. I included this image because I think a lot of folks think of higher ed as being regalia in a classroom lecturing. And the reality is that when you shift into entrepreneurial type programming, you find yourself standing in a field surrounded by bees. And it's a very, I call it this this sort of cultural disequilibrium. I can get, students come to class and you can lecture and you can invite them to do things. But if it's not a traditional approach, there are moments where they just stare at you. And this is happening a lot lately, especially with virtual learners.
Right.
So Patrick mentioned this kind of disconnect between the sort of the entrepreneurial culture and the academic culture, but I'm of the mindset that those don't have to be disconnected. And I think that through the EPMA program, we sort of showed that you can be entrepreneurial within the context of higher ed, and that this EPMA program has actually led us to consider more formal entrepreneurship as part of what we do at the Center for the Environment. So this past fall, because of the pandemic, we had to pivot our project work. We had originally planned to work with a community partner in Newcastle, and because of the restrictions, we weren't able to do that. So we said, well, what can we do that we can do on campus? And so we decided to study entrepreneurial endeavors associated with Pennsylvania natural products with our field station. And there's a picture there where you see Patrick in the bee suit. There's a student next to him also suited up, and then a lot of students standing around sort of watching them. So they were immersed in this field experience and getting to see these bees up close and personal. It was really a cool experience. But bees wasn't the only thing that students studied. There were 4 groups. Students worked in small groups. So in addition to studying entrepreneurial endeavor associated with honey, we had a group that focused on a Christmas tree farm, another group that focused on maple syrup, and another group that focused on hemp as a cash crop. And so as part of this, the students put together a business venture analysis that looked at both the science and the business side of things. And we're going to dive in a little bit into the apiary group. Next, Patrick. Yeah. So the B Westminster team created this information here, both the graphic and the data table there, but each group had to do this detailed report, which included for their particular business venture, a SWOT analysis, looking at the competitors, looking at the financial startup costs, but also doing financial projections over 3 years. This particular group looked at honey certainly as a product to sell. They estimated their cost of goods sold per unit, but they also proposed to do sponsorship for hive boxes so that alumni or friends of the college could donate $1,000 and sponsor a hive box. That was part of their business model. And every group, in addition to this B group, recognized that any of these entrepreneurial endeavors weren't going to be big profit generators, but what they were going to do would provide very unique educational experiences for the students who would participate in them. And so that was really the sales pitch, that these are super cool experiences for our students. And that's, this is a launching point, I think, for us, that we can really sort of maybe formalize our entrepreneurial endeavors at our field station. You're up, Patrick.
Thank you. I have a sunset going down. Changing the camera lighting. One of the interesting things, as I've worked with students over the past decade or so about developing these sort of programs, is that students often focus on the end product. And so, there are, being that I'm an environmental scientist and really a field ecologist, it wasn't until, a little more recently, I started putting more business type and having a little deeper understanding of sort of the externalities that play in and putting language to it. Sort of the internal costs associated. Students like to focus on that end product. And seeing those steps along the way is critically important to developing a full understanding. So, the kind of joke here is, if bees earned the minimum wage, a jar of honey would be 182,000. Um,
Wow.
there is a tremendous amount of energy that goes, we'll call it energy, that goes into um, developing that jar of honey for sale. And so projects that where we focus on a brief experience and look at the outcome potential, we're trying really hard and through a beekeeping course um, to take that academic exercise of learning about pursuing these endeavors on paper to applying them in the real world, right? And an ambitious goal and not always something that's achievable. In beekeeping, this is a course that's running now. There's nothing like a little bit of fear. It's a healthy fear and a 500,000 bees to recruit students into a course. And so this is we'll call it a live action course. This is set in our apiary, and we cover necessary content um, in the classroom, and then we go out and see it. Um, we see nature working. And so instead of just focusing on that final jar, it's this exploration of beekeeping and how does this work. And so in developing a course like this, we have these as a college exercise and a good practice. We identify course objectives and goals and learning outcomes and assessments, and you make connections. But really, the spirit of what we're going for, and is this something that's relevant? Is it important? The concerns are the content. Why are we gathered together in an academic place studying these things? Because it has environmental relevance, but it has to be interesting and engaging. And students have to be willing to step outside, literally step out of a traditional classroom and do non-traditional. And there's always conversation about what's traditional learning, what's non-traditional. Um, our experience is trying to pursue that entrepreneurial spirit. If we can take one of those projects from EPMA of that great course, a combination of courses that have been put together, and can we explore that and actually do the project and see it through? But it's not. I'm not interested in just handing students buckets of honey and saying, okay, now sell it and see if it worked. We need the opportunity to be stung, and we need the opportunity to find, what is the usefulness in our curriculum, and how does this experience and the characteristics of it apply not just to what we're doing, but how do we take that beyond, so that they have that their curiosities, that they have the skill set to go with it, so that they can embrace and develop those ideas um, to meet that people, profit, planet, that nice balance.
And so what we're envisioning that is that next spring, we will launch what we're calling the Environmental Entrepreneurship Lab, which will be a course. It will be an interdisciplinary program, so students from all disciplines could participate. And this would be the opportunity to take the understanding of the beekeeping course and put it into sort of a business practice. Can we turn this into a profitable business venture? And the students will be involved in exploring that and trying to market it and coming up with a business plan, and selling the honey and maybe selling sponsorships. And so it's going to be a very interesting applied look at bringing together that science and the business in this real world application, and giving these students the opportunity to try things outside of their comfort zone, to fail at something and learn from that, and then regroup. All of those really important things that are part of the culture of entrepreneurism, and we see a lot of value for education in that.
And it's a departure, I think, from what we typically see, and so the value of education and what role, what is the purpose of higher education is not a new question, right? It's not a new thing to the scene. It's something that Ben Franklin was very concerned. So we're talking 1750s. This is something that he was very concerned about. That, for one, that education is for everyone. It's not from a specific. It's not only for the elite. That good ideas and work ethic and applied knowledge is not something that's owned by anyone. That it's something that collectively we all have and should pursue, and that we should cultivate these civic values and provide them. It's important practical skills necessary to address presenting the pressing problems of the day. And so that of the day to me suggests that it's a dynamic thing, that the um, that missions and strategic plans um, are not permanent doctrine, right? It's not dogma. It's something that it's good practice to question. It's good practice to explore and to develop those skills necessary. Is what higher education, the purpose of it, to provide a service to society, not to operate in silos. Projects like this really emphasize personal investment and personal responsibility. There's specifically with the beekeeping course, um, the bees make the honey, but the students, it's a very different investment of time, energy, and responsibility when you don that cover and you step into an apiary. It's a very different type of investment. So Franklin, this has been sort of a question that's been asked over and over and over again, and I think that is a nice stepping off point for us to talk about this.
Yeah, so what we wanted to kind of wrap things up with is to have an opportunity for some discussion. So there are a lot of people who are questioning the value of higher education. So specifically, who is getting to go to college? Who can afford it? Is it worth the investment? And what is the outcome in terms of the workforce? So what we're trying to do through the Center for the Environment is to offer these unique educational experiences, these entrepreneurial experiences, to kind of to address some of these challenges of higher education, to provide this unique opportunity for our students. But we're open to conversation here. We'd like to hear what your ideas are about this, about the future of higher ed, and how the Center for the Environment might be able to play a role in it.
So first of all, this is very interesting to me. This is Ron. Um, I have to ask a couple questions here. Um, how unique is this type of program in higher education?
Well, I guess the question is which program? Are we talking about EPMA? Are we talking about beekeeping? Are we talking about environmental entrepreneurship? I guess the answer is they're all pretty unique. Patrick, there are just a few schools, right, that offer a beekeeping course, in fact.
There are centers across the country um, that are tied to higher ed institutions. For example, Penn State School of Agriculture is one of the national leaders and an excellent resource for students. We're at Westminster College is a school that has an undergraduate residential population of 1,100 students. And so in programs of our size, there are schools spread across the country that may have hives, but as far as at least from what we could find, uh, there aren't many. There aren't many that offer a beekeeping course because um, there are risks and challenges, but also it's field based, and so it takes a unique campus and um, uh, you know faculty who are willing to do sort of that entrepreneurial type program.
Right. I went to Hiram, and Hiram's got a pretty unique position and course. And I think this is, because there's a Barrow Field Station at Hiram where you can do these type of things. And I think that Patrick, that's probably pretty unique in the liberal arts education, wouldn't you say?
It is, but I think it might only happen, courses like in this EPMA may only happen at a liberal arts school. Um, academic institutions have, we always call it siloed, right? I talked about that tradition of the discipline that departments and schools, and they get to be of size that they're, smaller liberal arts schools allow us the opportunity to create curriculum that you just don't get. And it sounds like I'm promoting this, but it truly, it's, when I have an interest, I walk into another building or just down the hall, and I talk to a colleague, and so we're able to take those ideas and develop programs from it. I think that's a little bit unique for liberal arts programs, but it's also, I think it's very much at home in a liberal arts setting.
Yeah, and I would agree. In smaller liberal arts schools, that's what you get. I mean, I've been very involved with the Westminster Entrepreneurial Center, and that's really another unique program that is, distinguishes or differentiates the college from some of the other schools.
And we have, programs like this. We've certainly, and programs we're not talking about tonight, where we've had quite a bit of overlap with WEC, or the Westminster Entrepreneurial Center.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of look at this and say, we've done a number of programs here at SCORE on the importance of bees, and there's a gentleman named Trent Baldoff that actually has done some entrepreneurial work in beekeeping. He has a company named Have a Hive, and he's also looking at some funding with CBD oil and honey, and pulling that together. And so we've had many discussions on this, and I think it's pretty unique for the school. Does the school really see this as a differentiator? I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but
I hope so. If you're interested in contributing to the program, we can talk after this. I mean, I think we had a slide about sponsorship. You know what? Yeah, I mean, certainly we've had a lot of support. We've had the academic freedom. I guess they've given us enough leash to, and it certainly, it's gotten me quite a bit of attention. I think it's true of any time you have a program that, when Helen and I were talking about doing the course and really developing this, you set course limits on how many people that, can actually be in your class. And you never know. There's always that period where you gear up and you have the boat next to the dock, and you have to take that step to commit to go off. And with a course like this, we'd kind of kicked around, didn't really have a sense, and kicked around the idea maybe 6 students, and we hit 20 students as soon as it opened. And we've been having to turn away students because of COVID and just practical restrictions, right?
Yeah.
And so, interestingly, the course is not full of environmental science majors. It's full of we have everyone from English.
It's a blend.
Yeah, it's a unique, and I think the appeal. I think the first 15 students that signed up were female, and not science-oriented majors. And so that suggests that, we're probably on the right track with some of this. It certainly is a welcomed show of support, and it's trickled down. It's sort of, I think the next step. What is, how does this program? We're only in the intro, and we haven't written the ending yet, and so the content that we're working with is bees, but certainly the idea applies to a lot of different areas. And what we're trying to do, you get those ideas and models for students to be engaged in something that's relevant, that isn't just applicable to one specific idea, right? It's got universality to it. That these are ideas that students can take and apply to other areas. And I think that's the sweet spot in all this too.
Yeah, and I think too, don't underestimate, and I know you didn't mention this word. I don't know why you didn't, but that's for discussion and debate. But experiential, and I think it's when I learn by doing, and I think most people do. It becomes somewhat repetitive, but you do gain knowledge by doing it. And I think there's a factor in here that is fairly unique. And I know experiential is an old word, and not too many people use it anymore. But I think when I when I did my master's, I actually, and did some of my doctoral work, I went to the University Without Walls, is what we called it in the 70s. And it was actually called that in the late 50s and 60s. But that was a consortium of universities that said, you can learn no matter where you're at. You don't need a classroom to learn. And I think this highlights the fact that, here you have a liberal arts school in sleepy New Wilmington that, is looking at this in a holistic sense and trying to tie the disciplines together, that really focuses on the experiential piece of this. And I think that's impressive.
Well, thank you. And I think, for me, if we can be tagged as the field station for the liberal arts, I would love that, right? So I think a lot of field stations at different colleges belong to the biology department or the environmental science department. And we want our students to see that there are opportunities for them regardless of major, right? And we have a lot of art courses that already take advantage of our field station, but we'd like to expand this and see lots more of courses from across all disciplines taking advantage of our outdoor resources, and really that experiential component that you're talking about. You can really do that well when you're out in the field.
Yeah. Where is the station at?
It's campus.
The whole campus?
We're 300 acres. It's contiguous, so it's not.
Okay.
We're all connected.
All right.
And right, so that's an advantage. Yeah.
Now, Patrick, how well do you think? I think this is a pretty unique idea, and it's very, very to my earlier point, a differentiator for the college. But how tied into other type programs like, and I don't have the name of this, but there was the old convent up at Villa Maria that has been transformed into a farm. And are you guys looking at farming in that sense? Because bees are integral to that, and bees are integral to our survival as a species. But are you looking at, interaction with those type of groups that do that farming on that transformation? And are you focused or have any consideration to do urban farming as well?
Good question.
Now, you're not in an urban area.
We're not, but we're what are we, 15 minutes from?
Yeah.
15 minutes from Youngstown.
Yeah.
Then you take 208 across, and it's always funny when I had worked quite a bit over in with Camel and in I guess East Youngstown area. And it was funny. It was 15 minutes. It sounded like a Geico commercial. It was 15 minutes, and it was 150 years because as students would come over and you transition from Youngstown into Amish country with it was always funny when students we would pass buggies on the road, and it was like you had done a time warp. So we are in a predominantly agricultural community, but we are uh, 10 minutes from the city of Newcastle that provides lots of opportunities. We do have partnerships, and our students do internships out at Villa Maria.
Okay.
Our field station, um, we have a community garden and pollinator gardens and stuff. So we emphasize that aspect of it, the role that bees play. It's like 80%. When you walk into a grocery store, 80% of what you see is there as a result of pollination. And so certainly uh, of my professional interest, that's what I'm interested in. In Newcastle, we have Lawrence County Community Action Partnership, and we're looking at ways to connect, and we do, but also ways to formally connect with some of their innovative programs.
Right.
So yeah,
Well, this is,
before you came on tonight, I was talking to Monica about she's in. I'll call you out, Monica. She's in an urban setting and is interested in developing sort of agricultural practices and has interest in the environment. Monica, I don't mean to speak for you.
No, it's okay. Hi. So I work for the Department of Sanitation here in New York City. I inspect vacant lots and abandoned properties. And in 2019, I was able to help a lady who her house was next to a vacant lot that had been abandoned for over 17 years. And she wanted to turn it into a community space in an industrial area. And we sanitation cleaned a lot, and then we helped her test the soil and see if it was good for community raised beds. And we kind of came to a halt on the testing because it's not cheap to test soil, but we are looking actively for other ways to build on this lot as a community space and draw attention to the residents within the industrial area, um, and just keep it a project that's constantly happening, where I don't think it could be like where we grow fruits and vegetables and stuff, but if there's other ways to kind of sustain the land and allow green space to come there, then I'm interested. So thus that led me to this conversation today, and I actually appreciate it. I wish we were closer,
Yeah,
but
we were sharing beforehand that the city of Pittsburgh has a nice model, Berg's Bees, where you have uh, distinctly urban areas and that they still do agricultural practices. And certainly, trends across the country look at developing those green spaces, bringing that into those sort of food deserts, and but really just for people the opportunity to connect more with their environment, and we can lose that. Children growing up in cities don't always have the opportunity to connect in the way that those of us who live in rural areas do.
right,
So,
There
Monica,
and there's a
those are great programs.
and there's a lot of research out there that supports kind of uh, personal well-being just from being able to be out in these green spaces, even small ones in urban settings. So there's a lot of benefit that goes along with these green spaces. So kudos to you for being part of this. This is a really neat opportunity.
As far as a resource, if you're in Pennsylvania, I would say Penn State Extension has a great. Ohio State also has their land grant institutions. So Ohio State, Penn State, probably NYU. They would have a lab that for an affordable. It's a nominal. Some of the tests may be $30. that they will, instead of trying to do the testing yourself, where you just take samples, send it out, and they give you a really very comprehensive analysis of what you have and recommendations for how to remedy that. And so instead of just looking, they have equipment that no individual can really afford to have. And so that might be a nice resource for you to use. Take advantage of that system that's already established in the state.
Yeah, we partnered with a welding company in the area who had an internship set up with a local college, and they welded something that looks like the Titanic into the land to kind of allow people a photo place in the green garden that we created. So the college ended up fully partnering with Mathwith Welding Company and their arts program. And it's going to be a continual yearly 12-week internship. And we work together to kind of see how we can continue to build up this specific space. So I will definitely look into that college and see if they could help test our soil. And I do want to research beekeeping a little bit more. It's not really my background, but I am an entrepreneur and I took this on by myself, not necessarily with my job as a backup. So the funding was on me because I wasn't a nonprofit. The local city councilman couldn't help me. So I definitely learned a lot and took a lot of losses, but just getting agencies to come together and do something good for the community was such a take back for me that I don't even regret it at all.
Yeah, and I think you landed on a really key word, which is partnerships. I think in any sort of successful environmental endeavor, creating and fostering those partnerships is really key to success.
Yes.
Yeah, it's terribly entrepreneurial of you.
Yeah, exactly.
You're the right audience.
I
But
definitely learned a lot and it was not easy. And I did it all in 60 days.
Wow.
It's definitely possible to see an idea into fruition. And it's amazing how when you have an idea, you see other people's dreams help you facilitate that idea. And it becomes a project before you know it.
Absolutely. You know, I think guys, the interesting thing about this is I got into a discussion with a friend of mine about the city of Youngstown at one time, and I said the city was designed to hold 200,000 people, and only 50,000 live there now. And it's really a shame of what has happened to the city. But I said one of the options are, I said, you've got a very sparsely populated east side, and that's the side closest to Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
And you've got really no industry over there. There's nothing. You've got a lot of, streets with one or two houses on them. And I said, what we need to do is figure out how we move those people out of there and either do two things. We make it a gas field and take all the gas out of it, or we make it an urban farm and make that farmland that can actually support and be sustainable long term. And I think we all know what the best answer is for that. It's not making the gas field because you're going to be able to extract that gas at some point whenever you need it through, some type of probably better development than certainly fracking. But I think there are people that are talking about doing that and making that part of town farmland again. Patrick and well, for everybody on the call, how do you do something like that? And I think you have the basis for doing it or driving that and being part of an educational process. But how would you do a project like that in the city of Youngstown?
I think you start with acknowledging that it's not simply about providing money or in resources,
Yeah,
that um, people have a connectedness to the land that goes beyond. This is a cultural um, opportunity.
transformation or
It is, you know,
retransformation.
yeah, it's not about throwing resources and money and again, there's a sense of ownership, and that if you know, the connectedness to the land, that you know, the goal is you know, you got to figure out ways to incorporate their ideas, community input, and a sense of ownership in any of these projects is the driving factor behind it. It certainly could not be imposed on folks, because that in itself would mean that it wouldn't be successful.
Right.
Um,
Can I add?
I think with Monica, you know, you said like there's a sense of pride, there's a sense of ownership, like what you can accomplish. That's important for all of us to feel that, and it doesn't it's at work, but it's also in your personal life, and certainly when it's in your community. That's something that the foundation for that is acknowledging that it's about people committing to and feeling that worth in that endeavor.
I would like to piggyback off that and say that when you're trying to um, get acknowledgement from either residents in the area or even partnerships from people, it's important to kind of take in the demographics of the area and find ways to explain your purpose to each demographic in a way where they acknowledge the importance. I feel like explaining something to students or a younger crowd as far as a community project, you might have to approach differently than the middle class tax-paying citizens that own properties in that area. So I definitely feel like understanding the demographic is important in any project per se, but especially in agricultural.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think one of the things that I learned with a liberal arts education is the responsibility you have to society to leave the world better after you leave it, you know, than it was when you got it. And I wish that we could somehow, you know, and I guess we do that one by one, Helen and Patrick, you know, as we teach. We do that one by one and getting people to understand the value in that and the sustainability long term of what we do with the land and how we make it even better for the future generations than it was handed off to us.
That's
I
the
think,
goal, right? That's the goal.
yeah,
Big,
that's important.
big community projects are just that. It's community, and so and it's the buy-in, the purpose, the connectedness, that land ethic that people have to their sometimes small apartment, sometimes big farm. It's still
Yep.
that same land ethic that this is my home, this is my ownership, and this is my safe place. This is where I am, and
Yep.
and that's very transferable. Certainly, um, farmers feel that all the time.
Yep. Well, first
Yeah,
of
I
all, I
think
want to,
anywhere along the Rust Belt is from Pittsburgh to Erie and beyond. We have that, right? Every community up and down
right,
the valley.
right. Yeah, I mean, you know, we're here this evening and I'm calling from Ashtabula, Ohio. And, you know, not many people know that Ashtabula is, you know, has 36 wineries, Ashtabula County. And it's one of the, you know, nicest wine growing areas in the United States. And it's mostly Concord grapes, but which is used for, we all know who buys those, Welch's, to make jelly and that type of products. But there's also a lot of wine made here, and it's really an interesting place to be. So I want to kind of wrap things up tonight. I thought this was an exceptional presentation, and it really gave us some insight on sustainability and responsibility in sustainability. I'm very impressed with what you guys have set up here, and I know I've had a couple students that I've worked with at Westminster that have gone to your classes and that type of thing. I think it's very refreshing to see you guys look at it this particular way. And I thought that was very exciting and very well explained. I just have a couple questions to wrap up. Do you guys feel you get enough publicity for what you're doing? Or
No,
could you?
No. And as the follow-up question about pay,
Yeah.
you happen to be in wine country, and I know they send cases around, so it's always a work in progress, right? Marketing is not the where it's slow to change institution. Helen, how would you? Not enough PR.
Well, I think we get so immersed in doing what we do that we don't have the time or energy to sort of push the message out there more, right? But so we are very thankful for this opportunity to come here tonight and talk about the stuff that we're doing. So thank you for that.
Well, this, just the reason I asked that is because we when we video these, we put them on the Business Journal, and the Business Journal usually picks these up, and we'll do a small story and share the event with folks. And Rob Zullo did a presentation maybe a week ago, maybe 2 weeks now, I don't know, on how to get into sports management. And my LinkedIn had 2,800 people opened that link about Rob Zullo's, and about 50 people commented. So I think even though we didn't have the turnout we expected tonight, you'll find out when you go into Youngstown Score Presents, and you'll see the people, casually looking at that and see how many readers you have. But you guys wouldn't mind, Helen or Patrick, to talk to the Business Journal, would you?
We'd be delighted to.
Okay, just want to make sure. And I think there's a lot of people will be looking at this once we get it out on LinkedIn. So thank you for the time tonight. I'm really, I have to put a little disclaimer on this. I do teach part-time in the business school at Westminster in the master's program. So I think this is something that the school has to be really proud of, and is a differentiator for Westminster College.
Well, we like to think so. So
thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll sign off tonight. Appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Monica, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, Monica, that's
yeah,
great.
that was really great. Yeah.
I really appreciated the idea that being an entrepreneur can be something incorporated in a school curriculum, so to speak, in its own way. Mm-hmm. I definitely, as someone who's going to be an online student for an associate's in business, I'm excited that I was able to start kind of this way. Classes start for me March 29th. So this was an introduction for me to online learning and just remote learning. And I enjoyed it. So thank you, and good luck to you all.
Well, Good luck to you. And I can already tell you have the initiative, and you're gonna do just fine.
I'm not afraid to fall or lose. And that's what being an entrepreneur is.
Yep. Very good. All right. Good night, everybody.
Absolutely. Have a good night, everyone.
Right.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.